Now, for more on the Just Energy Transition Conference and Eskom's grid performance, I am now joined by Energy and Electricity Minister, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, who's in studio with us. Dr. Ramokgopa, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for the invitation and good evening to the viewers back at home.
I think let's just start with that announcement today. You already knew it, obviously, because it was an ANC resolution. It seems there will be much more on your plate than you were already dealing with Eskom now falling under you.
Well, I think it's a welcome decision. I think it's going to help Eskom also. You are not going to have multiple points of reporting, so they are able to coordinate their work through a single window of entry into government, and that will be the Ministry of Energy and Electricity. But it also makes for better planning from the ministry side. Eskom knowing that there's this shareholder who's a Minister of Energy and Electricity, and all of our interventions can be better coordinated, and we are able to manage the entire value chain of electricity provision in the country. So it's going to make for great, if you like, efficiency in how we make decisions, the speed of making decisions, but ensuring that the accountability framework is streamlined. So we welcome the decision by the President.
And the extra workload for you too?
Not exactly. I guess that with the expanded mandate, we have always known that they will be working very closely with Eskom, amongst others, who are driving now the procurement process in relation to public procurement of renewable resources through the dispensation of the IPPs. On the energy front, gas front, working with the intensive gas users to ensure that the sustainability of supply. So essentially, we are responsible for the entire energy complex. So it's very important that a dominant player such as Eskom is within, if you like, the domain of the ministry, and they don't have multiple points of reporting, like I said. So it makes it easier for us to arrive at decisions, ensure that there's better levels of coordination on our part. So we think that this augurs well for the industry, it augurs well for the future of Eskom, but also enabling us to ensure that we attain energy security for the country. So we welcome the decision by the President.
Minister, I also want us to talk about this Just Energy Transition Conference we had today. And in your opening remarks as well, you're talking about the implications on municipalities. And you said that, you know, the intention is to democratize the conversation on just energy transition, also including South African nuances to it. Take us through that.
Well, I mean, hitherto the conversation was almost restricted to smoke-filled boardrooms and elitist discussion. So it's important that we are able to connect the issues of just energy transition with experiences by ordinary people on the ground. And there's no better place to have that conversation than with municipalities, the closest sphere of government to communities, so they've got a greater appreciation on the challenges that obtains on the ground. I mean, if you look at extreme weather occurrences that are attributed to climate change, the flooding that has been experienced in KZN, the drought that was experienced in the Western Cape, it's important that there's an appreciation by a common man that, in fact, the issues of just energy transition have got a relationship with the experience. And then we must be able to translate what are the government interventions in the resolution of this transition, the issues of climate change, like I said, the extreme weather occurrences. So it's important that in the context of that conversation, we are able to address, for an example, the current public interest issues. What are those public interest issues? The fact that communities are experiencing what you call load reduction. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm here, we talk about ending load shedding, but for other people in the country, I mean, this is meaningless. They have they're experiencing 5 hours in the morning without electricity, 5 hours in the evening without electricity. So they can't relate to us saying that we are making significant strides in resolving load shedding, 150 days plus without load shedding, when in fact their daily lived experiences is such that they don't have electricity. And then you also have the issues of the affordability levels with regards to electricity. We know that the electricity tariff structure, tariffs have been skyrocketing. If you compute since 2006 to today, they've increased over 600%. So it's eroding, if you like, the disposable income of households, a disproportionate impact on low-income households. So it's important that when you talk this just energy transition, we're able to illustrate how these interventions are going to ensure that there's a sustainability of supply, energy is available all the time, we're able to invest in distribution infrastructure, and then we're able to bring down the cost of electricity. And that's why it's important that we need to have that conversation with municipalities so that we can provide, as I call it, South African characteristics to the conversation around just energy transitions. It's not an amorphous conversation. It's got the direct and real implications on the lived experiences of our people. And that's why we chose to occasion this conversation with practitioners, municipal leaders, if you like, mayors, and municipal managers. Let's have these conversations, but with an intention of having tangible and concrete outcomes. And I'm confident that tomorrow when the conference concludes, we are going to see meaningful outcomes coming out of that conference.
I also wanted to talk about that balance of accessibility of energy, affordability, and also, of course, the environmental factors as well. The president also making much mention about renewable energy and local government as well. At what cost will that come?
Well, first is that it's not a binary conversation. So it's not about fossil fuels or cleaner forms of generation. I think we're talking about the mix. So coal has got a place, gas has got a place, hydro has got a place, renewables have got a place in the form of solar and wind. But what we know is that there's going to be an exponential increase of the share of renewables in the energy mix because of our commitment to decarbonize. But we also know that the cost curve has come down. Essentially, it's cheaper using these cleaner forms of technology. They've got their own technical limitations. They are non-dispatchable. By that, I mean they are not available throughout the day. So they rely on the redundancy of a base load, which is really coal, nuclear, and gas. And that's why we're talking about that mix. But we also know that if you get the mix right, you are likely going to have an impact on the cost of electricity because it's a function of the fuel sources that deliver the electrons to their households. And then also the area that the work that we have done on liberalizing the generation side. So you are undermining the monopoly that is Eskom. Eskom will continue to be a dominant player that is owned by the South African public. But you are introducing new entrants, increasing levels of competition, and in so doing, you hope that there's going to be greater investment by private sector, research and innovations, and in so doing, delivery of production and delivery of electricity will be cheaper, and then there will be a pass-through to the end consumer. So you will not see the exponential increase in the tariffs, and in fact, you are going to see the tapering down of electricity increases over a period of time. So we think that the net result of this will be security of supply. You have de-risk from just a monopoly, so there's multiple players. And of course, electricity becomes more reliable and cheaper for the end consumer. The South African economy becomes more competitive. The products that we produce more competitive when it goes to international markets. But we also are preparing ourselves for what I call artificial barriers, the introduction of a carbon border adjustment mechanism, an instrument used by major industrialized countries to assess how products that are landing in their markets were produced. So your energy-intensive industries like steel, cement are going to be penalized if they are not produced through cleaner sources of energy. So it's in our collective interest. So in some industries, it's an existential question. And that's why we have to bring this under one umbrella so that we are able to have an honest conversation, but also position the country to take advantage rather of our natural endowments, which are renewables, and also pass that through to low-income households, the poor, that they get to benefit from these endowments that we have as a country.
One of the alarming stats, you also just mentioned it now, you also mentioned in your opening, was that electricity prices have increased by 600% since 2006. We've also seen reports that NERSA has admitted that they had mistaken their interpretation of the law when it comes to increasing and these excessive tariff increases as well. What does that mean if the regulator is saying that, look, we may have made a mistake here? What does that mean for ordinary residents like ourselves who have been keeping up with these exorbitant electricity increases? Is there a possibility that perhaps it will drop drastically? You mentioned that it could taper down, but to what it's supposed to be?
Well, first is that I think it's an unfortunate public articulation on one of the commissioners at NERSA. I had an engagement with some of the NERSA leadership, so they have a different view. That notwithstanding, electricity prices have been going up. That is untenable. And that's why it is important that we are able to have in the energy mix, if you like, energy sources that are cheaper, and over time, that benefit can be extended to the end consumer. But there are immediate interventions that we can make. So first is that in the long run, we are revising the energy pricing policy. So we've already initiated that work. But in the short term, what are those interventions? So government has got a policy on free basic electricity that is directed at low-income households for as long as they are within a particular threshold of household income. We know that National Treasury is providing, if you like, support to about 10 million houses in the country, but only 2 million are receiving that benefit. So working with municipalities, we must design an efficient and robust instrument that is going to make it possible that the 8 million that are left out are accommodated so that we are able to cushion the poor. The second immediate intervention outside the bigger conversation on pricing policy, we've got a grant, the INEP grant, that is meant for universal access, essentially providing, ensuring that everyone has got access to electricity. We want to rethink that, because we are guaranteed this 5 billion rand allocation per annum. How best can we aggregate, crowd in rather, private sector investment? It's a certain a guaranteed, if you like, grant going into the future so that we're able to accelerate the delivery of electricity to low-income households using new forms of generation, solar, PV with embedded battery and inverters, so that it's not only the rich who benefit from our natural endowments, but also the poor are able to benefit from that natural endowment. And then there are issues around smart meters that are able to intelligently ensure that during peak periods you are removing if you like, components that are responsible for the biggest consumption at the household level. I'm talking of geysers. So during peak periods, you disconnect the geysers, and in that way, you reduce your demand. So we are incorporating technology. Some of it is using artificial intelligence to ensure that we are able to guarantee supply, to ensure that we are able to reduce the cost of electricity to everyone, and in particular, low-cost housing. So it doesn't necessarily follow that middle-income household can stomach this. I mean, yes, they do absorb it, but at great cost to their lived experiences. So we want to ensure that we provide relief to everyone across the board. Of course, the priority will be low-income households because they are disproportionately affected by the cost of electricity. It's really eroding, if you like, the social wage that they are receiving. So on the one hand, you give them a pension grant, SRD, you mentioned them, and then you are taking it on the other side through exorbitant utility tariffs, water and electricity. And that's why it's important that we are able to provide immediate relief to those households. And part of that conversation there is to how best to accelerate that. But as a ministry, we are committed, like I said, to the country. We'll announce how best we are going to scale up these interventions. The resources are there, so it's not new money. Is how best you efficiently deploy the money that is available to provide the kind of relief that is needed, especially for low-income households.
And speaking of money, the big elephant in the room, of course, is the municipal debt to Eskom running into tens of billions of rands. And the president also had something to say about this. I just want to play this clip before you answer that question.
We will need to deal with challenging issues like electricity pricing structures and the staggering levels of municipal debt that is owed to Eskom. The second area of focus is the issue of sustainable financing for electricity infrastructure. The municipal grid systems need to be upgraded and they need to be modernized and also to be extended as a number of people keep thronging to our towns, to our cities.
I mean, you heard, of course, the president, their staggering level of municipal debt. How will you overcome that? How will you make sure that municipalities do go and pay these debts? Well,
first is how much is municipalities owed. So there are two conversations. What municipalities owe to ESCOM. So collectively they owe about 78 billion rand. So, but municipalities collectively are owed by various categories of debtors, around 340 billion rand. So it's important that we pay our dues. So we know that in that category of debtors is business and then it's government and it's household. So it's important that the government as a start, the provincial and national government, they have to pay their dues to municipalities and of course business and household. And that's why it's important that we are able to increase the capacity of local authorities first to do billing, completeness of billing, bill each and every person that is consuming. And secondly, ensure that that billing is correct. And that has to do, if you like, with the technology that is deployed at the level of municipalities, the kind of capacity that is there. And then also introduce instrument to cushion low-income households, so what they call indigent households, so that you are able to pass through that grant allocation that municipalities are getting to these low-income households, and then address with what we call non-technical losses, what is referred to in the township colloquially as izinyoka, people who are connecting illegally, placing a great strain on municipal infrastructure. So you need to deal with all of these things. And part of addressing this challenge will include, amongst others, as the president has reflected, how best do we design bespoke financing instruments to ensure that we invest in distribution infrastructure. Transformers are failing, transformers are exploding as a result of the weight that is placed on them. So address the issues of illegal connection, make sure that people are appropriately connected, meter them correctly, increase the capacity of this distribution infrastructure, ensure that municipalities have got the right technology in place to bill everyone and bill them correctly.
But also on that, Minister, with the correct billing as well by municipalities, it's been a problem for a very long time as well, and the technologies have not yet been put in there. Many residents have complained about billing issues, but they just continue. So the problem has been carefully and properly diagnosed. Can we have timeframes in terms of like when municipalities are showing an indication that they'll be able to have those kinds of technologies and solve the billing issues?
So first is that the technology exists. So that's the first part. And secondly is that we know that high capacity municipalities like metros and secondary municipalities like Polokwane and Mangaung should have the capacity to be able to roll that out. So our attention really working with SALGA is on rural and poor municipalities so that we are able to capacitate them sufficiently. They don't have a balance sheet to be able to support the kind of investments that are required, including on the technology side. So we need to find a way of how best do you repurpose some of these grants to make it possible for them to roll out the kind of technology that is required to enable them to do to ensure completeness of billing and accurate billing, and also credit control measures, and also accommodate the low-income households that they miss the threshold of receiving free basic electricity so that we are able to pass it on to them. So really that's, we're thinking more of shared services function, so essentially creating capacity at the national level. That capacity will then be deployed into these municipalities so that we are able to help them. What we have decided to do, there are too many municipalities that are experiencing these challenges, so we've identified per province 2 municipalities that have got the highest debt to ESCOM, use those as a pilot municipalities, and use those experiences as a template to export and deploy it in other municipalities so that we are able to get the kind of impact that will be required. But it's not an easy solution. We'll work with the municipalities and SALGA to resolve this problem, and I'm confident about our ability to resolve the problem.
Minister, thank you so much for joining us this evening in studio, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
That was Energy and Electricity Minister Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa.